Do you doubt your worth? Do you tend to avoid conflict? Do you feel disconnected from your joy? Do you struggle with self-love and setting boundaries or feeling confident in your whole authentic self? Many people carry unspoken wounds and unexplored patterns that shape their lives in ways that they don't fully understand. And it's often those very patterns that keep you feeling stuck and frustrated or disconnected from the joy and the love and the fulfillment that you deeply long for. In today's episode, we're going to do a deep dive into one of the most transformative, yet often misunderstood aspects of healing, one of my favorite aspects of healing, inner child work. So if you've ever struggled to connect with your inner child, if you found building a relationship with your inner child to be confusing or overwhelming, or even if you've just questioned the value of inner child work, this episode is for you, Home Slice. I know that inner child work can feel intimidating. I know that it can be uncomfortable. Probably a lot of you guys have had that thought, well, the past is in the past. Like, what's the point of drudging all that up again? Or, maybe you've tried some inner child work practices before, and then it just didn't really land or stick or resonate or produce any healing results. Trust me when I say that I was also very resistant to inner child work in the beginning of my healing journey. But now I'm a full convert because nothing else in my healing practice and journey has been as transformative, as liberating, as deeply fulfilling and moving as my relationship with my inner child. So in this episode, we're going to untangle all those misconceptions about inner child work. We're going to talk about why people resist it. We're going to demystify what it entails and discuss why it is so unproductive for many people. And I'm also going to reveal how reconnecting with your inner child is going to liberate a whole new level of healing and self-love and freedom for you. So hopefully by the end of the episode, you're not only going to understand the value of inner child work, but you're also going to have practical steps to start building a healthier, more healing and impactful, meaningful relationship with them. Welcome to The Simple Source, your source for all things self-love, self-healing, personal growth, and spirituality. I'm your host, Linda Valines. I used to be chronically sick and unhappy. I spent years trying anything and everything to heal, but I never got better. It wasn't until my late husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer that I finally stopped searching for the answers outside of myself and turned within. I taught myself how to truly love and heal myself, how to finally be authentically healthy and happy, mind, body, and soul. I have over 10 years of personal and professional self-healing and teaching experience. I'm a trauma-informed, certified holistic health and wellness coach, certified Ayurveda counselor, and author. I healed myself of a lifetime of complex traumas and chronic conditions with joy and ease. Now I'm teaching you to do the same. So if you're ready to heal and love yourself more, mind, body, and soul, without all the struggle and stress, and with more joy and productivity, join me to liberate your highest, healthiest, and happiest self and learn how to thrive more simply. Let's get started with today's episode. All right, so whether you're totally new to inner child work or you've dabbed in it here and there and then struggled to experience results, we're going to unpack the why and the how of embracing your inner child is going to transform the way that you experience and love yourself and your life. And I'm going to start by sharing a little bit of my personal story with my development of my relationship with my inner child. I actually did a whole dedicated episode about my inner child summer last year and why it's so transformative. And I highly recommend going back to that episode because it reveals a lot of my own progression and daily practices with her But for this episode, I'll just do a little dabby do into it so you have a little backstory without fully getting into my relationship with my inner child, because that's not what this episode is about. But again, like probably a lot of you, I was super resistant in the beginning because it was such an abstract, sort of esoteric concept, like this part of myself that was a child, and how do you relate to this part of yourself? How do you develop a healing relationship with this part of yourself? And I was so resistant to acknowledging and addressing my traumas that it just felt like unlocking Pandora's box, because my childhood was so deeply, consistently, severely traumatic that I just didn't want to touch it. I just, again, wanted to leave the past in the past. That was my way of coping. And when I started to do deep inner healing work after my late husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and his prognosis was 2 years, and I was chronically sick and unhealthy and unhappy. And I was like, we're not going out this way, world. We're not ending this love with me feeling this way, showing up in my life this way. And so that's when I started to change my entire approach to healing. And instead of focusing all the external stuff, the diet, the supplements, going to all the specialists and all that, I went within. And that's when I was finally like, yeah, I need to start really addressing these traumas, because they've been a constant in my whole life. And when I did that, that's when I was like, okay, I need to see those parts of myself that were traumatized. I need to see that little girl. I need to see and love her. And so that began my relationship with my inner child, which was foundationally about me learning how to love myself unconditionally. And unconditional self-love is unconditional. So I had to practice accepting, which required acknowledging all the parts of myself in order to love myself completely, unconditionally. And my relationship with my inner child has evolved, and it's progressed over, a decade. And most recently, it's become a greater priority. And because of that, my external reality has transformed so profoundly, because I have unlocked a deeper level of our relationship. I've gained a deeper level of her trust. That just means that I've healed more deeply on a core level. And that ultimately means I've liberated her on a foundational level. And of course, that means my adult self is also liberated. And because she feels more joyful and free, adult Linda feels more joyful and free. I mean, that's the relationship. We're going to get into this in a minute. So I used to be afraid and avoidant of my past as well. And in doing inner child work, I have fully, completely understood, mind, body, and soul, that when we heal our past, it is in service of our present. It is in service of our future. And so we have to go to the original wounds. We have to validate them. We have to understand them, because we can't pretend that turning away from something makes it go away. That goes against the very fundamental laws of how energy works. Nothing is neither truly created or destroyed. It's only transformed. And so that energy, those wounds, those experiences of your inner child, again, they don't just vanish because you choose to ignore them, avoid them, deny them. They're there, and they manifest in your life as problems in your relationships, issues in your professional life, financial life, issues with body image, issues with self-worth, issues with feeling unlovable, incapable, you name it. Because all of that, all of your inner child programming is your programming. And we're going to get into this, but who you are now is a direct result of your past. So healing your past, of course, means that you're going to heal your present and your future. And so in healing my inner child, I have also healed not only my relationship with myself, but of course, my external world. That means my outer relationships, my embodiment of my purpose, my capacity to feel deeply. And that includes joy, but also, pain. I mean, it's all so beautiful. It's all why we're here, is to feel, experience life deeply, profoundly, the full scope of it. Not only that, but I've also expanded my capacity for my own magic, to believe in my magic, to see my own magic, to create my own magic, meaning I have unlocked a wellspring of my power because our inner child truly holds that key. And I'll get into this a little bit more later, but now when I see my inner child, I see her as her highest self. I see her as her true self, and the sheer volume of magic in our daily lives now is a direct reflection of that, of how I have healed her and liberated her so that she can shine as her highest self. So your inner child not only holds your deepest wounds, but also your greatest capacity for joy and playfulness and creativity and self-love. So by reconnecting with them, you do unlock the purest expression of who you are, the purest essence of who you are. So let's start with, what is the inner child? So Carl Jung originated that term and concept of the inner child. And everyone has an inner child because everyone began life as a child. And that inner child remains in our psyche throughout our life, regardless of how old we are. And our inner child formed the foundation of our subconscious programming. And so they represent our connection to our truest, purest self, because our subconscious is like the gateway to our highest consciousness. It's our primal part of the brain. Your subconscious programming is directly linked to your inner child because the experiences that you had during childhood, particularly between the ages of 0 to 7, were imprinted directly into your subconscious mind because your conscious mind was not yet fully formed. And so those early imprints, those early experiences, they literally shaped your beliefs, your emotional patterns, your identity. So that subconscious programming is going to continue to influence your relationships, your mindsets, your entire reality as an adult until you change it. And most people never change their subconscious programming, and they are basically adult children. So whether your inner child feels happy or wounded just depends on the mental, emotional, and physical environment of your upbringing, as well as how much healing you've done and achieved. So reclaiming your inner child means that you gain control over those foundational core subconscious patterns and programming, which then allows you to consciously shape your new belief system, to consciously recondition your emotional health, and then consciously embody your highest self, authentic self, purpose with confidence, because you're no longer operating from the wounded beliefs and identities and emotional patterns of your wounded inner child. Now, one of the most transformative aspects of healing is connecting with and nurturing your inner child, because of all the things that I just said, because they're the key to your subconscious programming, and your subconscious controls like 95% of your reality. So without embracing that essential, fundamental core part of yourself, achieving lasting, authentic, holistic healing and happiness and health frankly, it's not possible. Your inner child holds the key to resolving the core wounds that perpetuate the problems that you experience over and over again as an adult. So when you liberate your inner child, you really do liberate your whole authentic and highest self. So when you learn to meet and love your inner child unconditionally, you do heal the roots of your relationship with love itself, both with you and your lineage, and also with the world. The patterns that leave you feeling stuck and unsatisfied and frustrated in your adult life originated in your childhood. But when you reclaim your inner child, you take that first and powerful step toward breaking free of those patterns and those problems. And you then are in a position to truly create a life that is aligned with your highest and whole authentic self, and genuine joy and power and potential. So now let's define what a healthy inner child is, because there's the healthy inner child and then there's the wounded inner child. So the healthy and secure inner child is rooted, formed in a childhood that was free from severe trauma, consistent trauma, complex trauma, and marked by attuned, emotionally mature parents or caregivers who didn't project their unresolved issues and traumas onto their child. Now, in that kind of an environment where there's emotional regulation and attunement and accountability and healthy interdependence between caregiver and child and healthy boundaries, the child feels safe. And then when the child feels unconditionally loved and supported, they develop genuine confidence in their whole authentic self. They learn to balance life with dependence and independence as a child. And so then as they grow, their needs, including physical, emotional, and psychological and spiritual, they're consistently met through, again, attunement to mature care. And they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel valued, they feel special, unique, and important to not only their caregivers, but to the world and the universe. That foundation enables them to explore, to learn, to make mistakes, to build healthy relationships, not only with themselves, but with their family members and with the world, because there is a foundational trust that they are okay, not only in themselves, but in their immediate environment and in the world, meaning they're safe. So that means that that child's needs were met at every stage of development. And that's so essential for cultivating not only psychological health, but emotional health. So you've probably heard of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs maps, the path from survival to self-actualization. If you haven't, you should just Google it. Also, there's Erik Erikson's model, which defines emotional milestones from infancy to adolescence, which is extremely valuable to understand in terms of childhood needs or what a healthy childhood entails. Now, together, those two frameworks, Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Erik Erikson's progression of emotional needs, those frameworks emphasize that it's so important to nurture a child's trust, autonomy, motivation, industry, feeling industrious, and their identity. So when loving and emotionally balanced caregivers provide that consistent level of care and support and encourage the authentic self-expression of the child grows into a confident and secure individual who then feels safe in themselves and then also feels safe in the world. And that means that they're fully capable of thriving and realizing their full potential. Now, let's define the wounded inner child. So where the healthy inner child feels safe and seen, the wounded inner child feels unsafe, unseen, abandoned, and mistrustful, because the wounded inner child is often the result of growing up in a family dynamic that was dysfunctional, that was influenced by unresolved trauma, and was unstable, whether that was mentally, emotionally, physically, all of the above. So without psychologically and emotionally mature parents or caregivers who can fully meet the holistic needs of a child, the child is going to internalize those adverse experiences because their parents did not have the maturity, the resources, the tools to provide emotional, mental, physical nurturance, attunement in a consistent and healthy manner, whether that resulted in outright abuse or unconscious emotional neglect, or if that meant that a parent was overly critical or demanded perfectionism, or even like subtle events like feeling overlooked because you had siblings. All of that is traumatic to a child on emotional and psychological and physical level. If they're not resolved by the parents, if those experiences are not addressed, acknowledged, validated, and repaired. And so the child will internalize those experiences as meaning that something is wrong with them. It's their fault. And so those experiences, of course, like I said earlier, because a child doesn't have a fully formed conscious mind, those experiences then shape the child's subconscious beliefs and emotional patterns, and that results in them creating identity about themselves in the world that are rooted in emotional scars and unresolved stresses. And then that just manifests as patterns and cycles of fear and shame and sadness and anger and limiting beliefs about their worth and safety and control and belonging and love. Because children lack the logical capacity to understand and to integrate and synthesize and to make sense of those emotions and those events, those unhealed wounds become deeply ingrained, and they form a negative framework that then influences their entire sense of self, which then, of course, influences their life outcomes and events and experiences. So negative cognitions that stem from unresolved trauma basically fall into 4 categories. So there's control, safety, perfectionism, and responsibility. And those negative cognitions result in beliefs of feeling helpless, beliefs of not being able to trust the world or people, beliefs of your inadequacy, and beliefs that you are to blame for everything that's wrong. It's your fault. And then those types of negative cognitions, those distorted narratives, when left unchallenged, they perpetuate emotional immaturity in the child. They perpetuate inner instability, nervous system dysregulation. All of that hinders the child's ability to feel free, to live freely, to be authentically themselves, and to feel safe, not only in themselves, but in the world. So you can see how the wounded inner child left wounded is a massive influence in your life. And so true, authentic, and lasting healing requires you to acknowledge your inner child, to acknowledge their wounds, their adverse childhood experiences, their traumas, their suppressed emotions, their fears, their insecurities, their vulnerabilities. You have to meet them as they are, because that's a key wound for the inner child. The wounded inner child is not feeling like their experiences were validated. And so, when you reparent, when you begin to build a relationship with your inner child, fundamentally, the first thing you have to do is you have to be able to meet their needs. You have to be able to understand that they needed love, they needed attunement, they needed to feel safe, they needed to feel cared for, they needed to feel like they belonged, and they didn't get that. So when you begin to validate and honor and love and resolve your inner child's wounds, you then free your inner child from those fears and those limiting beliefs that they don't belong, they don't deserve love, that they are incapable, that they're unworthy of having good things in their life, that they can't trust anyone that they love. There are so many limiting beliefs that are rooted in inner child wounds and unresolved traumas. And then what you do in resolving them and developing a healing relationship with your inner child is you pave the way for your adult self to feel emotionally secure, to feel accepted as your whole self, to love yourself, and to feel empowered to begin to live a truly authentic and whole life. So here are some common indications that your inner child is wounded. This is sourced from John Bradshaw's book, Homecoming, which I've read twice and I love it. It's so good and I highly recommend it. So this is not a comprehensive list, but this will give you a good idea. So these again are signs that your inner child are wounded. If you have fears of failure and success, fears of rejection and abandonment, fears or beliefs of inadequacy, fears or beliefs of brokenness, fears or beliefs of being unlovable, fears or beliefs of not belonging, people-pleasing, codependency, perfectionism, low self-worth, self-criticism, self-shaming, self-judgment, constant anxiety and worrying about change, uncertainty, difficulty trusting yourself, difficulty trusting other people, difficulty starting, difficulty finishing things, difficulty knowing what you want, difficulty saying no. That kind of goes with people-pleasing. Feeling guilty for standing up for yourself, right? Setting boundaries, loneliness despite being in the company of other people, being preoccupied with being in control, tendency to overachieve, tendency to underachieve, taking on responsibilities that are not yours, discomfort with fear, anger, shame, guilt, sadness, heavy, uncomfortable emotions, discomfort in your body, discomfort with your self-image, discomfort being alone or being in solitude. If you tend to avoid conflict, if you lack healthy boundaries, if you have a history of addictions, if you have a history of obsessiveness, that includes compulsiveness, and if you tend to ruminate, those are all common indications of a wounded inner child. So now that you understand what your inner child is, whether they're healthy or wounded, and why you should heal them so that you can reparent them and give them what they need and thus liberate them, I want to discuss why so many people resist inner child work and why so many people have a difficult time feeling productive about it and secure about it. So I think that a lot of people have misconceptions about inner child work. And again, a lot of limiting beliefs like inner child work is hard. I hear that a lot. Inner child work is intense or requires too much work, time, or energy. And I also think that people misunderstand the value of inner child work. And so they just avoid it and they bypass it completely. And it goes along with that mentality of the past is in the past, just like move on. And that just comes from ignorance of people not understanding that literally everything in your life is a result of your subconscious programming. And whether or not your subconscious mind is in harmony with your conscious mind, and like 9 out of 10 times, that's a no for people. And so that subconscious programming is really running your life. And your subconscious programming, again, like I said in the beginning, that was formed in your childhood. And most people don't change that in their adulthood. So that means you're still running from your childhood subconscious programming. And so your present reality is just a result of your past. And so people don't understand, like, if you're stuck in your life, if you're unfulfilled, if you're unsatisfied, and you're just like reliving the same problems over and over again, those issues are rooted in unresolved wounds and traumas from your childhood. And most importantly, I think that people begin inner child work without a safe and stable foundation to be able to meet and relate and heal their inner child productively, because they lack self-love, they lack self-trust, they lack emotional health, and they don't know how to self-validate. They don't know how to self-regulate. And then that means they cannot offer or mirror that love and trust and emotional stability and validation and regulation to their inner child. That's a key reason that so many people do not have a productive inner child journey. And I also think that people are inconsistent with inner child work. They compartmentalize it. Where it's like, okay, I did my journaling for 10 minutes for the week or whatever, and back to the hustle and grind. And you just completely neglect to revisit your inner child or check in with them, or you do a meditation like once a month. And then again, that's like literally the only time that you connect with your inner child. Your inner child is a constant part of who you are. So when you engage with them and then you abandon them, which is essentially what that is, like, okay, I did a meditation once a month. I gave them love, and then you never check in with them again. They feel abandoned. I mean, that your inner child is a child. They think like a child. They are a child. And that's what happens when you treat a child that way. When you're like, hey, I'm here, and then I'm gone. That's abandonment to them, especially when you're not going to explain to them what's happening. And you're in that meditation all loving them up. And then I'll be like, oh, I'm here for you. I'm always loving you. And they don't see you for like a month, 3 months, 6 months. It's like, that's not a healthy relationship for them. They can't trust you. So of course, that's just going to reinforce their fears, their limiting beliefs that they're not worthy of love. They're not worthy of attention, that they're fundamentally bad, etc. Because you're not respecting the fact that they are a child, and children have needs. Children need consistency in order to feel safe. So I'm going to give you a quick little guide so that you can start to relate to your inner child in a more productive way. So firstly, number one is you have to develop self-love. self-trust, self-validation, self-regulation. I said this earlier, but this is a key reason that people do not have productive and enjoyable and healing relationships with their inner child. Their relationship with themselves is not healing, is not healthy, is not productive. If you don't love yourself, if you don't trust yourself, if you don't know how to regulate yourself, if you do not know how to validate yourself, how are you going to offer that to your inner child? You're not, in a way that's going to feel empowering, in a way that's going to reflect to them that you are an authoritative figure who can reparent them, who they can trust. So number one is you have to develop unconditional self-love, because working with your inner child means that you need to be able to see all their wounds, all the parts of them that they deem ugly, which are the parts of you that you deem ugly, and relate to those parts in an accepting, non-judgmental, non-shaming way so that you can love them, so that you can meet your inner child's needs of needing love, of needing validation, of needing to feel safe in all of who they are. You have to develop unconditional self-love. And then you have to develop self-trust, because, so many people don't even trust themselves to feel their emotions, to see the parts of themselves that are uncomfortable, that they've been denying their whole life. And, self-trust is so fundamental. I teach it in the very beginning of my course because it is essential to your ability to heal in an enjoyable, productive, and meaningful way. Because if you lack self-trust, you are going to resist relating to yourself, because you don't trust that you can relate to yourself in a healing way. It creates a negative feedback loop where your conscious mind desires healing, but you have a deep fear that you are not capable of healing. So develop self-trust, and then learn how to self-regulate and self-validate. Self-regulation is just you being able to be present with yourself in the moment, with your thoughts, with your feelings, with your beliefs, with your behaviors, and with your choices, so that you can discern, am I feeling, thinking, behaving, and choosing in a way that is in alignment with my truth, highest self, and authenticity? Or is this a wound coming up? Or is this a trauma response? Is this a false identity being projected into my present moment because I am just unconsciously running on autopilot and not present in who and what I really truly am? So self-regulation is fundamentally rooted in self-awareness, so that you can go, hey, I'm out of alignment here. My energy is chaotic. I'm projecting. I'm people-pleasing. I'm not feeling grounded. I'm exhausted. And then being able to regulate yourself, which requires you firstly to validate yourself, to say, hey, I'm exhausted. I'm feeling this way. It's okay. Everything about my experience is valid and okay. Because you cannot begin to heal yourself if you do not accept yourself. So those are all fundamental, okay? So once you have that, which is key, so from there, developing a relationship with your inner child, I think really does require you to see them clearly. So I have photos of my inner child. I have a little collage of her through various stages of her childhood through adolescence, and I look at that every day. I look at it every day. So find a photo of yourself when you were like 5. So you're not just like using a memory, because a lot of times that can be unreliable. A lot of my childhood is just a blank, because there's so much trauma. There's a lot of repressed memories. So find a photo, put that photo somewhere where you're going to see it every day. And you can also take a photo of the photo so that it lives on your phone or your digital device, and look at it every day. Like literally see your inner child. Like that within itself is so healing for them to be seen. Like that's such a need that so many of wounded inner kids need. They just felt so unseen, so invisible, so unimportant. So if you literally just see your inner child every day, and not in a gotta look at you, check that off the list type of manner, but a real moment with them, that requires 30, 60 seconds of your time to acknowledge and to see the part of you that needs to be seen. That's so fundamental for developing a relationship with them. Then you have to start to validate their experiences. You have to begin to validate their needs, their emotions, their fears, everything that has caused them to feel alone, to feel unsure, to feel insecure, scared, unlovable, not enough, incapable, unworthy, undeserving, ugly, broken, bad. You need to validate all of it, and not from a very neutral place while being self-loving, because you don't want to exaggerate or exacerbate. You just want to validate with love and authority, meaning you're empowered in that moment. Like you have differentiated your mind. This is my inner child, and I'm showing up for them as the adult who can provide them their needs to feel seen and loved and cared for. I can do that for my inner child. Because if you're relating to yourself not from that place of authority, they're going to feel that, because you're basically then just showing up as your wounded inner child to your wounded inner child. That's, again, why foundationally I said self-love, self-trust, self-regulation, self-validation. This is so foundational. You cannot skip over that and expect to have a productive relationship with your inner child. So also validating their experiences is not about bypassing. So when we validate, it's not about, okay, that was validated, now let's move on and forget about like the emotional release or the unpacking if they need it. It's also not about fixing them, because they don't need to be fixed either. Okay, that's huge. That's key. Who they are exactly as they are, wounds and all, traumas and all, ugliness and all, insecurities and fears and all, they are perfect and whole as they are. This is why self-love is fundamental to a healing relationship with your inner child. Because if you don't have that relationship or perception of yourself, you cannot see your inner child in that way. And they will feel that. So again, validating them is not about like, I'm validating you and then let's move on. It's also not about fixing them, because they don't need to be fixed. It's just about acknowledging the reality of their lives. It's about seeing them. It's about letting them know that what they've experienced and what they're feeling is okay. And it doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make them broken. It doesn't make them ugly. It's just valid, and that they are still perfect and lovable and enough and good exactly as they are. And this leads me into the next thing, which is that is going to help you learn how to love them unconditionally. Like you have to tell them, no matter what happened, no matter how they're feeling, no matter what they experienced, you love them. You love them. And you will always love them, and they will always be loved, and they have always been loved by you. And I want you to literally send that unconditional love from your heart to their heart. And this is not a conceptual thing. There is energy in that intention. And when you set that intention and when you become present in that moment to say, I'm going to give you my unconditional love from my heart to your heart, you are going to feel how healing that is. Of course, that might seem like, wow, that's really simple, Linda. Like that shit is profound, yo. When you do that day after day, that is an energetic exchange. That is a healing energetic exchange. And your child feels that, because that's ultimately what they need, is to be unconditionally loved. And the next step is to offer them safety, to offer them companionship and protection. This is huge because they need to feel safe. That's a big key, right, of resolving trauma, adverse childhood experiences. Their sense of safety was disrupted. And so you have to consistently let your inner child know that you're there for them, that you are there to protect them, that they are safe with you, and that you will take care of them. Because yes, as an adult, it is now your responsibility to take care of your inner child. It is no longer your parents' responsibility to take care of you as an adult, meaning it is not your parents' responsibility to reparent your inner child. It is your responsibility. So when you consistently offer them that protection, that safety, that guardianship, that companionship, they're going to feel less alone. That's so massive. And they're going to feel less scared. And that's going to take time. But again, this is about consistency. This is not about you showing up once a week, once every couple of weeks and being like, I'm here for you. No, when you look at that photo of them, again, 30 seconds, 60 seconds for you to see your inner child and go, I love you. I'm always here for you. You're safe with me. I'm here to protect you. I'm here to take care of you. I will always be here for you. That took like 20 seconds for me to say. You can do this every day. It's not going to be a burden. Next step is to reassure your inner child that they are worthy and that they are deserving. You have to remind that, because that's what trauma does. Not only does it disrupt your sense of safety, your sense of lovability, if it is left unresolved, which if you have a wounded inner child and you're an adult, that shit is unresolved. And when you have unresolved trauma, it literally deteriorates your identity and thus your sense of worth and thus your deservingness, because your reality is going to continue to reflect your wounding. And that just reinforces the false wounded notion that there's something wrong with me. I don't deserve anything good in my life, etc. You fill in the blank because you're just projecting your unresolved wounds into the world. And that's where your reality is reflecting to you. So you have to remind your inner child, you're worthy, you're deserving. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of care. You're worthy of respect. You are deserving of everything that you want exactly as you are. You have to reinforce that they deserve to be treated with kindness, that they deserve respect. Because as children, we often are treated as kids, that we don't know what we're talking about. Oh, that's just magical thinking. Oh, you're just making that up. Children are fucking badasses. And children are so connected to divinity and they're brilliant, and adults have a tendency to diminish their worth and their intelligence and their connection to not only the divine, but to the world. And so when you reinforce to your inner child, like, you deserve respect, you deserve to be treated with kindness, it's so healing for them. So that's a huge step, is to reinforce their worthiness, to reinforce their deservingness. And exactly as they are, so that they feel that just because they had adverse experiences and traumas and fears and intense emotional experiences, that doesn't mean that they are at fault, A, B, broken, or C, unlovable. So you have to understand too that these are decades of conditioning that you have not challenged. So you need to start repeating a new narrative to them, meaning reconditioning a new story for them, where they do feel empowered, where they do feel enough, where they do feel lovable exactly as they are. So that means you have to reinforce. That was how your subconscious programming started in the first place. There was a negative event that happened over and over and over again that was stressful emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and it was never reconditioned. So this is your opportunity to reprogram your own story. And then empower them, which means reminding them of how brave and strong and resilient and smart and talented and creative and powerful they are. I mean, tell them their truths, because it is your responsibility to tell them that now as the adult you. It's you have to tell yourself what you need to hear. And when you reinforce that, when you remind yourself, which is what you're really doing when you're talking to your inner child, you're talking to yourself of how brave and strong and capable and powerful you are going to begin to feel that, friend. And this is a big part too of a healthy inner child relationship, is you have to thank your inner child for putting up with all that shit, for being so capable of holding all of that trauma and how brave they were and how much you've learned from them. Thank them, appreciate them, see them and their resiliency, see how intelligent they were, see how strong they were. That's so important, to express sincere reverence and appreciation and gratitude, because A, they deserve it, and B, again, children are just not revered enough for being so strong. Children are so resilient. And when you tell your inner child, I see how brave you are, I see how strong you are, thank you for your resiliency, thank you for teaching me those lessons, that's going to change so much. And not only how they feel about you, and how you feel about yourself. And finally, you have to commit to that relationship with them. You have to commit to dedicating yourself to loving them unconditionally, to resolving their wounds, to resolving their traumas and fears, and liberating them. That means you have to remain open to being available to them and to hearing what they have to say, to giving them space to feel their feelings and release their feelings, and to be available to protect them, to be available to care for them, to be available to give them what they need, because they do matter and they are a massive part of who you are. And because their happiness, their joy, their freedom, their health, their well-being matter. And so when you commit to all of that, you change their whole fundamental relationship, not only with themselves, but their safety and their security in being their whole authentic and highest self. So those are the basics of how to develop an authentically healing and productive relationship with your inner child. And that approach that I described, it not only provides the validation and the reassurance that your inner child needs, but you're also reinforcing that they're not stuck in their wounds and their traumas and that they're not alone. So when you consistently show up for your inner child that way, you're going to transform how your past influences your present and also your future, because you are literally reshaping your past, which means you are reshaping the foundation of your present by healing the root of your self-worth, your deservingness, your identity, your sense of safety, your sense of self-love, and also your embodiment of love. So here is your action step for the week. If you feel stuck or if you feel resistant connecting to your inner child on a daily basis, even in a small way, by just acknowledging that beautiful photo of them, just do this one thing. Just do this one thing for your inner child to make them happy and feel seen and loved every day. And that one thing is going to be determined by your inner child. So all that is taking a moment at the beginning of the day to be like, what does my inner child need to feel happy today? That's it. You don't need to overthink it. You don't need to journal about it. You don't need to meditate about it. Just ask yourself that question from your heart space and listen from your heart space. And of course, try to discern the difference between a compulsion, right? Rooted in unresolved wounds, like, oh, I want to just eat a bag of Cheetos. That's not going to make your inner child happy. That's a compulsion with junk food and numbing. So we want to discern what's a compulsion and what's a genuine desire rooted in their authentic joy and their wonder. And just do the thing. Do the thing for your inner child. It could be listening to a certain song. It could be watching a certain movie. It could be dancing. It could be coloring. It could be a hug. They just need a hug to feel happy. Just do the one thing for your inner child every day for 1 week. And that's going to begin to transform not only your relationship with yourself, but that core subconscious programming that is rooted in the belief that your needs don't matter. That's because that's a huge wounded child belief. When you begin to start meeting your needs, then you begin to show yourself, your adult self, and also your inner child self that you're capable of not only meeting your needs, but your needs matter. And that is a massive self-healing power move and self-loving practice. You have to understand that when you prioritize your inner child, you're actually prioritizing your joy. You're actually prioritizing love and liberation and your wholeness. So try to approach that exercise that way with, I'm going to feel free. I'm going to feel whole. I'm going to feel in love with myself today and have fun and play and be silly and know that all of that is such a radical act of self-love. So lean into it and rediscover yourself through loving your inner child. Thank you so much for joining me today in The Simple Source. I hope this episode has inspired you, reminded you of your healing power, and reawakened you to who your true and highest self is. If the show has empowered and enlightened your self-love, growth, and healing journey, please share this episode, leave a positive review on Apple or Spotify, and subscribe to be reminded of new episodes. I am so grateful for your presence, and all of your comments and your support are seen and read and deeply appreciated. They really do help this show so much. Also, sign up for my newsletter, The Weekly Source, to get more healing tips, motivation stories, and to get to know me better. And if you haven't read my book, Unconditional, You Are Perfect As You Are, I invite you to get your copy today and start reading. And lastly, I would love to see you inside my Source membership, the only holistic and comprehensive step-by-step self-healing program that is proven to work. It's time to stop struggling to heal and time to learn how to thrive more simply and joyfully. All the links are in the show notes. Thanks again for joining me today, and I will see you next time.